Hello everybody, welcome back to Flight Past. That track, by the way, was called Rain, which is my music, and you can go and find that if you want on Bandcamp and all that. It just happens that we've got the live weather on, and we're over Belgium, and it's you can see the showers coming down here now. And welcome to the channel if you're new to the channel. My name is Simon, and what we do is we use Flight Simulator 2024 to have a look at historical events, and it's a little bit of a sort of a lazy chat about history, so please join in, say hello, and do all that good stuff, and support the channel by being part of the production. That'd be really cool. As I say, we're flying here into this big cloud bank of rain, and on the other side of this we should come to the battlefield of Waterloo, and we left it in the last section, and Ney, it's about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and Ney has decided, he told Napoleon that d'Erlon's corps is ready for an assault. And Napoleon comes forward at this point and does a sort of a sweep of the battlefield along the horizon, and he does this because as soon as the bombardment of the Grand Battery begins, which will be the precursor for the advance of d'Erlon's corps, and the divisions of d'Erlon, it means that the smoke will just wipe out any vision. You'll have something like this, which you can't see anything. So Napoleon does this sweep of the horizon, and he sees a black cloud emerging from the woods of Chapelle Saint-Lambert, which is 6 miles away on his right-hand side. And he says at the time he can't distinguish whose troops they are, but we know, and I think we know, and I think he knows that these troops are Prussian, and they're not going to be Grouchy. Now, we've just flown back from where Grouchy is. We're in the Huey here, coming across, and the woods which he's talking about, where they're popping out of, is here. This village here is called Chapelle Saint-Lambert, and this is the area where he's talking about. Now, this rain is going to make it quite difficult to talk about this, so I may just switch it off now as we approach. Let's just see if we can. I'm trying to keep it live. I'm trying to keep it real. And we'll stick with it for a bit. If you're new to the channel, then please go back and watch some of this stuff, because we've covered a lot of this area before. I'm going to keep it live for now. It seems probably the best thing to do. But this here is the woods where Napoleon essentially sees this cloud. And this, remember, this is at 1 o'clock. And around about this time as well, a Prussian cavalry subaltern is brought to him, and he actually has, it's believed, is actually carrying a letter from Bulu to Wellington, reporting that the Prussian 4th Corps is arriving here. Now, whether that's true or not, I'm not sure. But the cavalry officer himself says to Napoleon that the whole army passed last night at Wavre, that they've seen no French. They've seen no French, and he believes his patrol was basically to come and see if the Grouchy had crossed over to Plancenoit on his right-hand flank. Regardless of that, and we know that when Napoleon hasn't seen Grouchy, it means that at this time, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, so he's only started the attack on Hougoumont about an hour ago. He is now aware that the Prussians are on his right flank. He knows Grouchy is not on his right flank because he had received a letter from Grouchy at 11 a.m. that was written at 6 a.m. to say that he was over at Walheim. And it's believed at this time as well that Sue writes back to Grouchy, and he says, "Your movement from Carbois to Wavre agrees with His Majesty's arrangements." Now let's pause there. Let's jump into the map, and let's find this place that they call Carbois. So Carbois is this place here. So essentially what Sue is writing back to say, and this is the order, he says, "Your movement from Carbois to Wavre agrees with His Majesty's arrangements. Nevertheless," he carries on, "the Emperor requests me to tell you that you must keep manoeuvring in our direction and seek to draw nearer to the army before any corps places itself between us. I do not indicate any special direction to you. It is up to you to ascertain the point where we are, to act accordingly, to keep our communications, and to see that you are in a position to fall upon and annihilate any of the enemy's troops which might try to molest our right." So he's saying, so if you receive that then from your emperor, and they say that your intention to move from Corbeil to Wavre is, the first line is that it agrees with His Majesty's arrangements, then that's what you're going to do. Yes, he's not aware at this time that the Prussians are going across to him. So, that's again, it's one of these woolly kind of messages that you don't really know what he's trying to tell you to do. Then he goes on and he mentions too, in the same dispatch, he mentions this letter that they believe that they've intercepted from Bulu to Wellington. And he says, "A letter which has been intercepted tells us that General Bulu is to attack our right flank. We believe that we can perceive his corps on the heights of Chapelle Saint-Lambert," which is, first of all, in terms of the map, we're here. And I'll just get rid of that so you can see, which is this place right in front of us here. And then he says, "Therefore, do not lose a minute to draw nearer to us and crush Bulu, whom you will catch in the very act." So that seems like... So he starts off saying, follow him to Wavre, then it's definitely, oh no, come across and capture Bulu's left flank as he tries to cut across. But this letter, these orders, or whatever you want to call them, that was sent at probably around about 1 o'clock, don't reach Grouchy until 5 p.m. And when it does find Grouchy, Grouchy is actually engaging Thieleman's corps up here at Wavre. So it's in a sense, it's way too late. So the argument is basically saying, even if he had then been able to, he was free to march, Grouchy would have probably not managed to get to Waterloo until probably midnight. And essentially, so what's happened is that the Prussians have come over here, and they're on their way across to this battlefield, and 3 corps are on the way. and they're marching unmolested. Yes, the conditions are difficult, and it will take longer than they would hope, but they are coming out of these woods here onto this plain here, and at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, definitely by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Napoleon is aware that the Prussians are on his right flank. So again, he could have looked into Grouchy's positions, done an assessment of where he was, and instead of sending that letter to Grouchy saying cut across to us and cut off Bulu, he could have said, we are looks like we've been outdone here, and we could pull back, and we will pull back, say, to Genappe, and you are to come and join us there. But that's not what Napoleon wants. He doesn't want these two armies to join up. So it goes back to when the lethargic morning of the 17th, and the sort of the lethargic nature of Napoleon on that morning of the 17th, when he didn't pursue the Prussians urgently, when he seemed to be having some sort of medical problem. There was an opportunity then to press the Prussians much more urgently, and they didn't do it. And at that point, then this whole campaign is lost. Here, then you get to the sense that at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, with the corps of rail already engaged over here on Hougoumont, it's got to I think a decision that Napoleon's just going to have to say that we're going to have to fight, and fight quickly. We've got to go in now, and this is when we get to the point where d'Erlon's corps starts to be engaged in the battle. So I think this is when you also see a change in the nature of the day, in Napoleon's demeanour. He's facing the realisation that his plan of campaign is unravelling. He's got the almost impossible decision to make about either continuing the attack or try to separate his army from the battlefield and manoeuvre it again to attack the Allies afresh. Now, I suppose when you're in this situation, you're thinking, well, how to disengage your army from Wellington. You know, you're not. You're open. You've placed your troops in the open. You're very visible. It was meant to be an intimidating maneuver to put all your corps along this line here below us. You know, to pull these troops back is going to be very visible. It's going to be a lot of organizations going to have to happen. There's going to be a huge amount of congestion on this road back to Genappe. Where do you go? Do you try to go just backwards? Do you try to move sideways? Do you try to move? You can't move right. I would have thought that these woods over here would be a terrible idea, so you'd have to go backwards first. And of course, then all you're doing then is allowing the army of Wellington and Blucher to actually come together in a very strong force to push you back. So it's almost an impossible decision to make. And so it's probably right that you just go for it at this point. You just go, right, okay, I've got to defeat Wellington on this ridge here as soon as possible, and hope that the Prussians don't get enough numbers to you. So from 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the nature of the battle in terms of for the French is now desperate. The time is running out, and he needs to get a move on. And of course, even if he does win this battle, even if he does get on top of this ridge and force Wellington back, he's got to have 2 or 3 corps of Prussians coming on his right flank. So you could argue that the defeat is almost inevitable at this point. It's believed at this time as well, he turns to Soult, his chief of staff, and Napoleon says to him, and I quote, "This morning we had 90 chances in our favour. We still have 60 to 40, and if Grouchy repairs the terrible mistake he made in amusing himself at Gembloux and marches rapidly, our victory will be all the more decisive, for Boulou's corps will be completely destroyed." Now, again, it's always take some of these statements with a pinch of salt. They may have been written after the event. I think the best he can hope for now, though, is that if Grouchy is doing what he said, then the mere threat to the left flank of Boulou will be enough for him to pause and not get his troops onto the battlefield as quickly as possible. And this is when we believe that Lebau's 6th Corps is brought up, and he starts making maneuvers to try to block Boulou's path onto the battlefield. So this is the first action orders that have gone out to basically start to use his reserves up to prevent the Prussians threatening his right flank. So 1:30 then, after all this arrangements have been done and the letters been sent out, and then maneuverings of reserves and bringing up Lebau's corps, we get to the point where the ground battery cannonades begins the cannonade, and Wellington's artillery respond immediately to it, and this cannonade begins and lasts for about half an hour, but we know that the effects essentially are pretty minimal on the British line. The troops are protected by the slope and the sunken lane. Let's just jump out here. Let's go and have a look outside for a bit. So it's likely that the French artillery are in this area here. And we're firing up on this ridge. Now, one of the we say it didn't have much effect. But there was one, and that was Balant's brigade. Now, Balant's brigade was somewhere in this region here, and they were forward of this ridge, which we see here. And for some reason, they've been left exposed. Why would they do that? You would put a battalion, or you put troops visible up front because you want to give the impression, basically, that there's more troops there than there are. So Wellington, if it was a deliberate ploy to have them here on this forward slope, is basically to try to suggest to Napoleon there's more here than meets the eye. But the cannonade that fires up here, but as you can see, most of this area down here is in a reverse slope, and with troops lying down, and with the state of the ground, you know, the effects are minimal. Now these guns, we believe there's about 88 of them over here, and they can fire at around about 2 to 3 rounds a minute. So boom, 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 and the sound of the guns carries to Brussels. Now Brussels is right over in the distance there, where that grey area is there underneath the cloud. That's the beginning of Brussels there. So the noise of the battlefield reverberates all the way back. They actually say that some of the windows shake in Brussels, and even people in Antwerp said they could hear the cannon. Now, so we're talking all the way back here. The Kentish Gazette reported on the 20th of June 1815 that a heavy and incessant firing was heard from this coast on Sunday evening in the direction of Dunkirk. So we're even getting we can hear it over the channel in Great Britain in the British Isles. So we're talking that the sound could come from Dunkirk direction. So they're talking, you know, over here. They could hear all the way across there. So tactics on the day then, and at the time is usually that the cannonade would signal, would begin, and then that signals an infantry advance. And the British tactics at the time would be to stand in line in order to present the maximum number of guns presented to the enemy, and the French would advance in columns, essentially in these sort of large formations of column that keeps the troops together. They're basically acting like a battery ram to come up this slope here, and just the weight of numbers to push back the infantry up here. And what you would try to do as well, you'd have cavalry on the flanks of the infantry, and this is to force the lines of the British into square, and that then reduces their frontage for being able to fire at the advancing infantry. And then if you then bring up artillery, then you've then got infantry trapped in a square formation, which is vulnerable to artillery, vulnerable then to the infantry, and if they broke out of the square, then they're vulnerable to the cavalry. I'm just going to run through what I would do. We'll have a little pause here. And then what I'd like to do is just run through some of the defenses on this side of the battlefield, the eastern side of the battlefield. We'll talk about Le Haisson, we'll talk about the gravel pit, and some of the hamlets over here of Papelotte and La Haye. And then we can then go, begin the second phase of the battle, which would be the attack of the corps of de Erlon on this side of the road. So don't go away. We'll be back in a second. If you're watching live, and if you're on YouTube, and we'll be back in the next part. I'd like to thank you for listening. I'd like to thank you for taking part. Please like, subscribe, and do all those other things, and I'll see you in a moment.